I went to the shelter to find a happy Labrador puppy, something safe to fix my broken life. But then I saw Max. 100 pounds of silver-muzzled Rottweiler, sitting like a statue behind the glass, staring at the door with a look of such profound heartbreak that it felt like looking into a mirror. The shelter manager didn't even say hello. She just whispered, "Don't look him in the eye, Claire. He only has 14 days left and he's already stopped waiting for a miracle." Max was a dog that everyone had written off, but I saw a mirror of my own heart in those eyes. Tap subscribe and join our community of animal lovers as I show you the 14 days that changed everything. I wasn't supposed to be looking at the senior dogs that morning. I had a plan. A good plan. A safe plan. 6 months earlier, Trevor walked out. Just like that. No warning, no second chances, just the sound of the door clicking shut behind him, and then nothing. Silence. The kind of silence that wraps around your throat at 3 a.m. and whispers that maybe you were always meant to be alone. My therapist, Dr. Reyes, had been saying the same thing for weeks. "Claire, you need something to care about again. Something that needs you." She'd lean forward in that way therapists do, like she was sharing a secret. Get a dog, something small, something manageable. So I did my research. Hours of it. Late nights scrolling through adoption websites, comparing breeds, reading reviews like I was buying a vacuum cleaner instead of a living creature. Labrador retrievers kept coming up. Gentle, friendly, easy to train, perfect for someone who could barely remember to feed herself most days. I found him online, Sonny. A 6-month-old golden lab puppy with ears too big for his head and eyes that looked like melted chocolate. The Riverside Animal Shelter website said he was great with people, housebroken and eager to please. I filled out the application that same night. 3 days later, they called. He was mine if I wanted him. Saturday morning came. I put on real clothes for the first time in weeks, not pajamas, not sweatpants, actual jeans. I even brushed my hair. The shelter was a 20-minute drive from my apartment. 20 minutes of rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd act, convincing myself that this was the answer. That Sonny would fill the emptiness Trevor left behind. The woman at the front desk wore a name tag that said, Rhonda. She had kind eyes, but tired ones, like she'd seen 1,000 stories that didn't end the way she'd hoped. She smiled when I gave her my name, pulled up my application on her computer and said, "You're here for Sonny. Great choice. Let me take you back." The kennel area hit me like a wall of sound. Dogs everywhere, barking, whining, scratching at the glass panels of their enclosures, tails wagging so hard their whole bodies shook. Every single one of them was performing, auditioning for the role of forever dog. It was desperate and hopeful and heartbreaking all at once. We passed German shepherds, pit bulls, mixed breeds whose ancestry was anyone's guess. They all wanted the same thing to be chosen, to matter to someone, to go home. Then we reached the puppy section. There he was, Sonny, exactly as advertised. Golden fur that caught the fluorescent lights, paws he hadn't quite grown into, that goofy puppy energy that made him bounce against the glass when he saw us approach. Rhonda unlocked the gate. "Want to go in and meet him?" I stepped inside. Sonny immediately jumped up, put his paws on my legs, licked my hand. He was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Exactly what I'd ordered. And I felt nothing. Not joy. Not connection. Not even mild interest. Just empty. The same hollow feeling I'd been carrying around for 6 months, now with a puppy attached to it. Rhonda must have seen it on my face because her smile faded into something softer, more understanding. Not quite what you expected? I opened my mouth to lie, to say he was great, to force myself through this because that's what I did now, forced myself through everything. But nothing came out. She studied me for a moment, then quietly closed the gate with Sonny still inside. "Sometimes," she said, "the right dog finds you, not the other way around." I followed her gaze down the hallway. We have a medical observation section. Quarantine area. Senior dogs, mostly. Dogs recovering from surgery, ones that aren't. Well, they're not really up for adoption. She paused. But you can see them if you want. I don't know why I nodded. I don't know why I followed her through that heavy door marked staff only and down a corridor that got quieter with each step. The noise from the main kennel faded behind us until all I could hear was the squeak of Rhonda's sneakers on the linoleum and my own breathing. This section was different. No jumping, no barking, no tails wagging hard enough to create their own breeze. Just stillness. And in the third enclosure on the left, I saw him. A massive Rottweiler, easily over 100 pounds, with a graying muzzle and brown markings that had faded with age. He was sitting perfectly still, facing the door, not the door to his kennel, but the main entrance door at the end of the hall. Just sitting there, staring, waiting. I stopped walking. There was something about the way he held himself, something about the absolute stillness of his body and the devastating hope in his eyes that made my chest tighten. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at Rhonda. He was looking past us, through us, at something that existed only in his memory. That's Max, Rhonda said quietly. 9 years old. Owner surrendered him 3 months ago, said they were moving and couldn't take him. Why is he sitting like that? Rhonda's jaw tightened. Because every single day for the past 3 months, he's been waiting for them to come back. He thinks they forgot him. He thinks if he just waits long enough, they'll remember. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been doing the same thing. Sitting in my apartment, staring at the door, waiting for Trevor to realize he'd made a mistake, waiting for my old life to come back and tell me this was all just a bad dream. Don't get attached, Rhonda said, and her voice cracked just slightly. He only has 14 days left. The world seemed to tilt. 14 days until what? She wouldn't look at me. We're out of space. He's unadoptable, too old, too big, severe arthritis in his hips. And he won't eat, won't play, won't interact with anyone. Nobody wants a dog that's already given up. I looked at Max again. Really looked at him. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than numbness. I felt recognition. What if I took him? The words came out before I could stop them. Rhonda turned to me, surprise written all over her face. Claire, you came here for a puppy, a small puppy. Max is exactly who I'm supposed to take home. I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know anything, except that I couldn't walk away from a creature who understood what it felt like to be left behind, to sit in the same spot every day waiting for a past that was never coming back. Rhonda studied my face for a long moment. Then she pulled out her radio and called someone named Janet. I need foster papers for Max, she said. We might have found him a miracle after all. I had 14 days to save a dying dog's life. I didn't know yet that he was going to save mine too. The apartment was too big for one person. That's what I kept telling myself, anyway. Trevor and I had signed the lease together, picked out furniture together, argued about whether the couch should go against the east wall or the west. He'd won that argument. The couch stayed against the east wall even after he left, because moving it felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. Most mornings, I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes with Sunday mornings and coffee brewing. The suffocating kind. The kind that presses against your eardrums and reminds you that no one is breathing in the room next to yours, no one is humming in the shower, no one is burning toast in the kitchen while cursing under their breath. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until I absolutely had to get up. Sometimes I made it to 8. Sometimes I made it to noon. My boss at the design firm had stopped asking questions after the 3rd week. Now she just sent me deadlines and accepted whatever I sent back, even when I knew it wasn't my best work. Dr. Reyes said I was depressed. I told her I was just tired. She gave me that look therapists give you when they know you're lying, but they're going to let you keep the lie for now because taking it away too soon might break you completely. Claire, she said during our session 3 weeks before the shelter. You're not living. You're existing. There's a difference. I picked at the loose thread on her office couch. I'm fine. You're functioning. That's not the same as fine. She leaned forward, her notepad balanced on her knee. When's the last time you did something that wasn't work or sleep? I couldn't remember. The days had blurred together into one long stretch of gray. Wake up, shower if I remembered, sit at my laptop, eat something from a delivery app, stare at the TV without really watching it, go to bed, repeat. I want you to try something, Dr. Reyes said. Get a dog. I looked up. A dog? Something that needs you. Something that gives you a reason to get out of bed, to leave the apartment, to remember what it feels like to be responsible for something other than design deadlines. She smiled gently. You don't have to decide today. Just think about it. I thought about it constantly after that, mostly because it was easier than thinking about Trevor, or the divorce papers I still hadn't signed, or the fact that I'd started talking to myself just to hear a voice in the apartment. A dog would need walks. A dog would need feeding. A dog wouldn't care that I sometimes forgot to brush my hair for 3 days straight or that I'd worn the same sweatpants for a week. A dog would just need me to show up. Maybe that was enough. Maybe showing up for something, anything, would teach me how to show up for myself again. So I started researching. I made spreadsheets. I compared breeds. I read training guides and watched YouTube videos. I convinced myself that if I could just find the perfect dog, the right size, the right temperament, the right level of neediness, everything else would fall into place. I found Sunny on a Tuesday night. 6 months old, already housebroken, described as gentle and affectionate. I filled out the application before I could talk myself out of it. 3 days later, the shelter called. Saturday morning, they said. Come meet him. I hung up the phone and looked around my apartment. The silence pressed back. I should have left after meeting Sunny. That was the plan. Meet the puppy, sign the papers, take him home, start the healing process, simple, clean, safe. But Rhonda had opened that door to the quarantine section, and now I couldn't close it in my mind. I need to see him again, I said. Rhonda paused, her hand still on the clipboard with Sunny's adoption papers. Claire, Max he's not what you came here for. I know. I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that you saw your own soul sitting behind glass, waiting for something that was never coming back? I just need to see him again. Please. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed and set down the clipboard. 5 minutes. But I'm telling you right now, don't let those eyes fool you into thinking you can save him. Some dogs are too broken. We walked back through that heavy door, back into the quiet section where Hope went to die. Max was still there, still sitting in exactly the same position, staring at that door with an intensity that made my chest ache. I knelt down in front of his enclosure. Up close, I could see the gray threaded through his black coat, the way his shoulders hunched slightly forward, the tremble in his back legs from holding the same position for so long. Max, I whispered. Nothing. Not a flicker of recognition, not a glance in my direction. His eyes stayed fixed on that door, waiting for people who were never coming back. Rhonda crouched beside me. His owners had him since he was 8 weeks old. They brought him in, said they were moving out of state, couldn't take a big dog. They didn't even look back when they walked out. Her voice went flat. He's been sitting like that ever since. 3 months. He thinks they're coming back for him. Does he eat? Barely. We've tried everything, wet food, dry food, chicken, beef, hand feeding. He takes enough to stay alive, but that's it. It's like he's punishing himself for something. She stood up, brushed off her knees. The vet says his arthritis is severe. Even if someone wanted him, he'd need expensive medications, special care, and he's 9 years old. Most people want puppies. Most people wanted Sunny. Golden and young and uncomplicated. What happens in 14 days? Rhonda's silence answered before her words did. We make space for dogs we can actually save. I looked at Max again. really looked at him, at the way he held himself so still, so hopeful, so utterly convinced that loyalty and patience would be rewarded, that if he just waited long enough, his people would remember him. I'd been doing the same thing, sitting in my apartment, keeping Trevor's coffee mug in the cabinet, leaving his side of the closet empty just in case, waiting for him to realize he'd made a mistake, waiting for my old life to walk back through the door and tell me this was all temporary. But Trevor wasn't coming back, and Max's family wasn't coming back, and we were both sitting in our separate prisons waiting for ghosts. I want to foster him, I heard myself say. Rhonda turned to me, eyes wide. Claire, you came here for a puppy. I know. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly. But I think I'm supposed to take him home instead. For 14 days, Rhonda said carefully. That's all we can give you. After that, if no one adopts him. I understand. I didn't understand anything except that I couldn't walk away from a creature who knew exactly how I felt. Rhonda pulled out her radio. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed the button. Janet? I need foster papers for Max. We might have just found him a miracle after all. I wasn't sure if I believed in miracles anymore. But I was about to find out. The foster papers were 3 pages long. Janet, the shelter director, went through them line by line while I tried not to think about what I was doing. You'll need to bring him back for a checkup on day 7, she said, pointing to a clause I wasn't really reading. And you understand that after 14 days, if he hasn't been adopted, we'll need to make the final decision. Final decision. Such clean, bureaucratic words for ending a life. I understand, I said, and signed my name at the bottom. Janet handed me a leash, a bag of prescription arthritis medication, and a folder full of instructions I'd probably never open. He's not going to be easy, Claire. He might not even acknowledge you for the first few days. Don't take it personally. I nodded like I knew what I was doing, like I hadn't almost passed out from anxiety in the parking lot 20 minutes earlier, like I was the kind of person who could handle a 100-pound dog with severe arthritis and a broken heart. Rhonda brought Max out on a thick lead. His massive head hung low, his movements slow and deliberate. Each step looked painful. When he saw the lobby, the same lobby where his family had abandoned him, he stopped walking entirely. It's okay, boy, Rhonda murmured, but her voice cracked. This time, someone's taking you home. He didn't believe her. I could see it in the way his body went rigid, the way his eyes darted toward that front door one more time, searching for faces that would never appear. Claire, you're going to need to guide him, Janet said. He won't know to follow you yet. I took the leash with shaking hands. Max's weight pulled against it immediately, not in aggression, but in resistance. He didn't want to leave. Leaving meant accepting that they weren't coming back. Max, I said quietly, we need to go now. He looked at me for the first time. Really looked at me. His brown eyes were ancient and sad and filled with a question I didn't have the answer to. Why should I trust you? I knelt down, ignoring the way my knees protested against the cold tile floor. I know you don't know me. I know I'm not who you wanted, but I'm here, and I'm not going to leave you. My voice dropped to a whisper. I promise, I'm not going to leave you. Something shifted in his expression. Not trust, not yet, but maybe recognition. Maybe he heard the same desperate loneliness in my voice that I'd seen in his eyes. He took one step forward, then another. Slow, painful steps that made Rhonda press her hand to her mouth and Janet look away. Getting him into my car took 15 minutes. The back seat wasn't big enough, so he had to fold himself into an uncomfortable position, his arthritic hips screaming protest with every movement. I wanted to apologize, to explain that this would get better, but I wasn't sure if I believed that myself. The drive home was silent except for Max's labored breathing and the sound of my turn signal clicking at red lights. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting him to look at me, to show some sign of awareness. But he just stared out the window, watching the world pass by like a passenger who hadn't chosen this journey. When we pulled into my apartment complex, Reality hit me like cold water. I lived on the second floor. No elevator. Just 24 stairs that suddenly seemed insurmountable with a dog who could barely walk. I opened the car door. "Okay, Max, we're home." He looked at the stairs, then at me. Neither of us moved. We were both wondering the same thing. What have I done? It took 40 minutes to get Max up those stairs. 40 minutes of coaxing, encouraging, physically supporting his weight while his legs trembled and his breathing came in short, pained gasps. By the time we reached my apartment door, we were both exhausted. I opened the door, expecting him to at least look around, to sniff the unfamiliar space, to do something that resembled normal dog behavior. Instead, Max walked directly to the front door, positioned himself facing it, and sat down. And there he stayed. The first day, I told myself he just needed time to adjust, that he'd eventually explore, drink some water, maybe even lie down. I set up a dog bed in the living room, filled a bowl with fresh water, put his medication beside his food dish. He ignored all of it. He just sat there, staring at the door with the same intensity he'd shown at the shelter, waiting for the people who weren't coming. By the second day, I started talking to him, not because I thought he'd respond, but because the silence had become unbearable, two creatures in the same space, both waiting for different ghosts. "I know what you're doing," I said, sitting on the floor a few feet away from him. "I've been doing the same thing, staring at this door, waiting for Trevor to walk through and tell me he changed his mind." Max didn't move, didn't even flicker an ear in my direction. "He's not coming back," I continued, my voice cracking. "And your family isn't coming back either. I know that's not what you want to hear. I know it's not fair, but we can't keep waiting for people who already made their choice." The words hung in the air between us. I wasn't sure if I was talking to Max or myself anymore. On the third day, I woke up at 6 a.m. to find him in the exact same position. He hadn't moved to his water bowl all night. His eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, his body swaying slightly, but he refused to surrender his post. "Max, please," I begged. "You have to drink something. You have to eat." Nothing. I brought the water bowl to him, set it right beside his front paws. He glanced at it, then back at the door, as if looking away even for a second might mean missing the moment they returned. That's when I understood. This wasn't stubbornness. This was grief. The kind of grief that makes you forget how to take care of yourself because all your energy is focused on holding on to something that's already gone. I knew that grief intimately. I'd been carrying it for 6 months, wearing it like a second skin, letting it dictate every moment of every day. I sat down beside Max, not behind him, not in front of him, but right beside him, and stared at the same door. "Okay," I whispered. "We'll wait together." We sat like that for hours, two broken souls keeping vigil for pasts that would never return. The morning light shifted across the floor. My phone buzzed with work emails I didn't answer. Time passed in that strange, elastic way it does when you're not really living, just existing. Around noon, Max's head drooped slightly. Not toward me, not toward rest, just the smallest acknowledgement that his body was giving out. I reached over slowly and placed my hand on his back. He flinched, the first real reaction I'd gotten from him in 3 days, but he didn't move away. "I'm here," I said softly. "I know I'm not who you wanted, but I'm here." His breathing slowed. His eyes remained fixed on the door. We were both still waiting. But at least now, we weren't waiting alone. On the 4th day, Max collapsed. Not dramatically, there was no crash, no cry of pain. He simply folded in on himself, his legs giving out until he was lying on the floor, still facing the door, but no longer able to hold himself upright. I called the shelter in a panic. Rhonda answered on the second ring. "He hasn't eaten anything," I said, my voice high and tight. "He hasn't drunk water. He just collapsed and now he won't get up." "How long has it been since he's eaten?" I did the math in my head. Since before I picked him up. 4 days, maybe 5. Rhonda was quiet for a moment. Claire, you need to hand feed him, right now. Otherwise, we're going to lose him before the 14 days are up. I looked at Max lying on the floor, his ribs visible beneath his coat, his breathing shallow. What if he won't eat from me either? Then you keep trying, every hour, until he does. Her voice softened. He needs to know that accepting help doesn't mean giving up hope. Show him that. I hung up and stared at the bag of dog food I'd barely touched. Then I remembered the chicken breast I'd bought for myself 3 days ago and never cooked. I pulled it out, boiled it plain, shredded it into small pieces. Max hadn't moved. His eyes were still open, still watching the door. But there was a glassiness to them now that terrified me. I sat down cross-legged beside him and held out a small piece of chicken. Max, please, you have to eat something. He didn't look at me. Didn't even acknowledge the food. I know you think they're coming back, I whispered, moving the chicken closer to his nose. I know you think if you just wait long enough, they'll walk through that door and everything will go back to the way it was. My throat tightened. But Max, they're not coming. And if you don't eat, you're not going to be here even if they did. Still nothing. I thought about what Dr. Reyes had said about me. You're not living. You're existing. That's what Max was doing. Existing just enough to keep waiting, but not enough to actually survive. I need you to try, I said. And I was crying now, tears dripping onto the hardwood floor. Please, I can't watch another thing I care about disappear. I pressed the chicken against his lips, just held it there, gentle but insistent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, so slowly I almost missed it, his mouth opened. Just barely. Just enough. I slipped the chicken inside. He chewed. Swallowed. The sound of that swallow was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in months. Good, I breathed. That's so good, Max. I held out another piece. This time he took it a little faster. Then another. And another. Not eagerly, there was no enthusiasm. No joy in it, but he was eating. He was choosing to stay alive. I fed him, piece by piece, my hand shaking, tears streaming down my face. When the chicken was gone, I brought the water bowl and held it to his mouth. He drank. Not much, but enough. When he finished, he laid his head down on the floor, exhausted from the effort of survival. I stayed beside him, my hand resting on his side, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. We're going to get through this, I told him, told myself. One day at a time, one meal at a time. We're going to learn how to live again. Max's eyes finally closed. For the first time in 4 days, he slept. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt hope. Trevor showed up on day 8. I'd just finished hand-feeding Max his breakfast. He was taking food more willingly now, even standing up to eat when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps that sent ice through my veins because I knew that knock. I'd heard it 1,000 times when Trevor forgot his keys, when he came home from work, when he wanted me to hurry up in the bathroom. Max's head snapped toward the door. For a moment, I thought he'd resume his vigil, that he'd go back to waiting. Instead, something I'd never seen before flickered across his face. Recognition. Not of the person, but of the threat. Claire, I know you're in there, Trevor's voice called through the door. We need to talk. My hands started shaking. I hadn't seen him since he'd picked up his last box 3 months ago. Hadn't heard his voice except in my nightmares where I begged him to stay and he left anyway. Please, I said, but my voice barely worked. Just go. I still have things here. And we need to talk about the lease. Open the door. I should have told him to leave. Should have called the police. Should have done a dozen things that a stronger version of myself would have done. Instead, I stood there, frozen, my body remembering how to be small, how to accommodate, how to disappear. I reached for the door handle. Max moved. Not toward the door he'd been watching for 8 days. Toward me. His arthritic legs carried him across the floor faster than I'd seen him move since the shelter, and he positioned himself directly between me and the door. His massive body became a wall, his head low, his eyes fixed on the entrance. A low rumble built in his chest. Not quite a growl, but a warning. "Claire?" Trevor's voice turned irritated. "What's that noise? Do you have a dog in there?" I stared at Max. At the way he'd planted himself like a fortress, the way his entire body said no one gets through me. This dog, who hadn't cared about anything for months, who'd been ready to die rather than accept a world without his family, this dog was protecting me. Something inside me shifted, cracked open. "Yes," I called back, and my voice was stronger now. "I have a dog, and you need to leave, Trevor. We have things to discuss." "No." The word came out clear and sharp. "We don't. The divorce papers are signed. Your name isn't on the lease anymore. You don't get to show up unannounced and demand anything from me." Silence from the other side of the door. Max stayed perfectly still, his eyes never leaving the entrance. His breathing was labored standing, hurt him. I could see it in the tremor of his back legs, but he didn't move. Wouldn't move. Not until the threat was gone. "This is ridiculous," Trevor said. "You're being ridiculous." "I'm being done," I said. "Goodbye, Trevor." I heard him say something else. Something sharp and mean that probably would have gutted me 6 months ago. But Max shifted slightly, pressing closer to my legs, and I realized I didn't care what Trevor thought anymore. I didn't care if he thought I was ridiculous or broken or impossible to love. I cared about the dog standing between me and my past, choosing to protect me even though it hurt. Trevor's footsteps retreated down the hallway. A door slammed somewhere below. Then silence. Max turned to look at me, and for the first time since I'd brought him home, his tail moved. Just once. Just barely. But it moved. I dropped to my knees and wrapped my arms around his neck. He was trembling from the effort of standing, but he leaned into me, accepting the embrace. "Thank you," I whispered into his fur. "Thank you for showing me I'm worth protecting." Max's breathing slowed. His body relaxed. We stayed like that for a long time. Two warriors who'd finally stopped defending doors that should have stayed closed. We'd both taken a step forward. Finally. On day 10, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I left the apartment for something other than work or groceries. Max had been eating regularly, even taking short walks around the block. His eyes had changed, less glass, more depth. He still moved slowly, still favored his left hip, but there was presence in him now. He was here, not just waiting to be somewhere else. "Want to go on an adventure?" I asked him that morning. His ears perked up. An actual response. I packed water, his medication, towels, and drove us 40 minutes to Crescent Beach. It was a Tuesday, overcast and cool, which meant the beach was mostly empty. Perfect. Max stood at the edge of the parking lot, staring at the vast expanse of sand and water. I wasn't sure what he'd do. If the new environment would send him back into himself, back to that frozen state of waiting. Instead, he took a step forward, then another. We walked slowly across the sand, Max's paws sinking with each step, his breathing heavy but steady. When we reached the water's edge, a wave rolled in and touched his front paws. He jumped back, startled, then looked at the ocean like it had personally offended him. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt foreign in my throat, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. "It's just water," I said, kicking off my shoes and wading in up to my ankles. The cold bit at my skin, sharp and real and alive. "See? It won't hurt you." Max watched me carefully. Then, with the caution of someone who'd learned not to trust good things, he stepped into the shallow water. Another wave came. This time, he didn't jump back. He just stood there, letting the water rush around his legs, his tail, that had barely moved in 8 months, lifted slightly. I waded out deeper, the water soaking the hem of my jeans. I didn't care. For the first time in forever, I didn't care about being careful or safe or appropriate. I just wanted to feel something. Max followed me. Slowly, painfully, but he followed. We stood together in the shallow water, the waves rolling in and out, washing over our feet and pulling back to the sea. Each wave took something with it: anger, grief, the weight of abandonment, and each wave that returned brought something new. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. Max's tail started to move, really move. Back and forth, cutting through the water, sending up little sprays. He was wagging his tail. I sank to my knees in the water, not caring that I was soaking wet, not caring about anything except this moment. Max came closer and pressed his head against my chest, his tail still wagging, and I wrapped my arms around him and cried. But these weren't the tears I'd been crying for months. These weren't tears of loss or loneliness or wondering why I wasn't enough. These were tears of release, of letting go, of understanding that sometimes the thing you didn't plan for is exactly what you needed. "We're going to be okay," I told him, my voice breaking with the weight of finally believing it. "Both of us. We're going to be okay." Max's tail wagged harder, splashing water onto my face, mixing salt water with tears until I couldn't tell which was which, and it didn't matter anyway. The ocean kept rolling in. The waves kept taking and giving, and two broken souls stood in the shallows, learning how to feel the sun on their faces again. When we finally walked back to the car, Max moved with something that almost resembled joy. His steps were still careful, still pained, but there was lightness to him now, purpose. I looked back at the ocean one last time. Trevor had proposed to me on a beach. I'd said yes on sand that looked just like this, under a sky that promised forever. But forever had ended, and somehow, standing here with a dog I'd known for 10 days, I realized that was okay. Some things aren't meant to last forever. Some things are just meant to teach you how to live again. The call came on day 13, just after sunrise. "Claire, it's Rhonda." Her voice was flat, professional, the way people sound when they're trying not to feel anything. "We need Max back tomorrow morning by 9. I'd known this was coming. The 14 days had been circled on my calendar since the beginning, a red mark counting down to the inevitable. But knowing something is coming doesn't make it hurt less when it arrives. "Has anyone inquired about him?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "No." A pause. "I'm sorry, Claire. You did an incredible thing, giving him these 2 weeks. He got to feel loved again before—" She stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. "Before we kill him." That's what she couldn't say. I looked at Max sleeping on the dog bed I'd bought him on day 6. His legs were twitching slightly, chasing something in his dreams. Maybe his old family. Maybe just rabbits. Maybe, hopefully, me. "There has to be something we can do," I said, "unless someone adopts him in the next 24 hours. Rhonda's voice cracked. "Claire, he's 9 years old with severe arthritis. He needs expensive medication for the rest of his life. The reality is that he deserves to live." My voice came out sharper than I intended. He survived abandonment. He learned to eat again. He learned to trust again. "And we're just going to give up on him because it's convenient?" Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "What do you want me to say? That it's fair? It's not, but it's all we have." I hung up and stared at my phone. At the camera I used maybe twice a year. At the social media apps I'd ignored for months because seeing other people's happiness felt like salt in an open wound. Then I opened my camera and hit record. "My name is Claire," I said, and my voice shook, but I kept going. 13 days ago, I went to a shelter to adopt a puppy. Instead, I met Max. I turned the camera toward him, still sleeping peacefully. He's a 9-year-old Rottweiler who was surrendered by his family after they had him for 8 years. He stopped eating, stopped moving, just sat and waited for them to come back. My throat tightened, but I pushed through. I fostered him because I saw myself in him. We were both waiting for people who weren't coming back. These past 2 weeks, we saved each other. He taught me that it's okay to stop waiting, that it's okay to live again. Tears blurred my vision. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Max has to go back to the shelter. And if no one adopts him by then, they're going to put him down. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. He deserves better than that. He deserves a home with space to move, someone who can afford his arthritis medication, someone who understands that senior dogs have just as much love to give as puppies. If you know anyone at all who can offer Max a forever home, please share this video. Please help me save the dog who saved me. I showed Max one more time. His gray muzzle, his gentle face, the slight wag of his tail as he sensed me watching him. His name is Max. He's at Riverside Animal Shelter. And he has less than 24 hours. I posted the video to every platform I had. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok apps I hadn't opened in months. Then I set my phone down and went to sit beside Max. He woke up and rested his head on my lap. "I'm not giving up on you," I whispered. "I won't stop fighting until the very end." My phone started buzzing. Then it didn't stop. The video was spreading. By midnight, the video had been shared 17,000 times. By 3 a.m., 50,000. People I'd never met were commenting, crying, sharing their own stories of rescue dogs who'd saved them. The hashtag number #SaveMax was trending. But trending doesn't save lives. Adoption applications do. I didn't sleep. Just sat on the floor with Max, watching my phone light up with messages from strangers around the world while the minutes ticked toward 9 a.m. Toward the end, at 7:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Claire?" A woman's voice. Older. Steady. "Yes. My name is Dr. Patricia Chen. Everyone calls me Pat. I'm a retired veterinarian, and I just saw your video about Max." She paused. "I'd like to adopt him. If it's not too late." My heart stopped. "You what?" "I lost my Rottweiler, Bruno, 6 months ago. He was 13. I thought I was done with dogs, that I couldn't go through that kind of loss again." Her voice softened. "But I watched your video and I saw Bruno in Max's eyes. That same heartbreak, that same capacity for loyalty even when it hurts. I have 10 acres, a pension that covers veterinary care, and a house that's been too quiet for too long." Tears were streaming down my face. "He needs expensive arthritis medication. Daily. And he's not going to get better. He's only going to get older. I'm a vet, dear. I know exactly what he needs. And I have exactly what he needs." She cleared her throat. "The question is, are you willing to let him go?" I looked at Max, sleeping peacefully with his head on my leg. The dog who'd taught me that love isn't about holding on to what's gone, but about showing up for what's here. "Yes," I whispered, "because he deserves more than I can give him." "You gave him everything," Pat said gently. "You gave him a reason to live. Now let me give him a place to live it." We met at the shelter at 8:30. Pat was in her 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen 1,000 animals come and go. She knelt down in front of Max with the ease of someone who'd spent her life understanding creatures that couldn't speak. "Hello, Max," she said softly. "I'm Pat. I have a big yard with squirrels you can watch, a bed by the fireplace, and all the time in the world." Max looked at her, then at me, then back at her. His tail wagged. Rhonda processed the adoption papers with tears running down her face. "I've worked here 15 years, she said, "and I've never seen anything like this." When it was time to say goodbye, I knelt down and wrapped my arms around Max's neck one last time. "Thank you," I whispered, "for teaching me that it's okay to stop waiting, that it's okay to let go." Max licked my face. Once, gentle. Then he walked toward Pat, his steps slow but certain, and didn't look back at the door. Neither did I. I drove home in silence, my apartment waiting for me like it had for months. But when I opened the door, something was different. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that leaves room for possibility. I looked at the spot where Max had sat for days, staring at a door that would never open the way he wanted. Then I looked at my own reflection in the hallway mirror, the same mirror where I'd seen that hollow look for 6 months. The woman staring back at me wasn't waiting anymore. She was living. I picked up my phone and texted Dr. Reyes. "I think I'm ready to talk about what comes next." Then I opened my laptop, pulled up a design project I'd been avoiding for weeks, and started creating something new. Outside my window, the sun was rising on day 14. Max had his forever home, and so did I.